The town was quiet, too quiet. Nestled against a dark, whispering forest, it held its secrets close. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The townsfolk went about their daily lives, but there was always an underlying tension, a sense of unease that never quite went away, and the biggest secret was the house at the edge of town. Old, abandoned, its windows like empty eyes staring out at the world. It was a place that seemed to absorb light, casting a perpetual shadow over the surrounding area. The house had stood there for as long as anyone could remember, a relic of a bygone era, its walls whispering tales of sorrow and despair.
Locals told stories, whispers of shadows that moved within, of voices that called out in the night. Some claimed to have seen flickering lights in the windows, as if the house was alive with a ghostly presence. Others spoke of strange noises, footsteps echoing through the empty halls, and doors that creaked open on their own. The stories varied, but they all shared a common theme. The house was not just abandoned, it was haunted.
But the house remained, a silent sentinel against the encroaching woods. It stood as a barrier between the town and the dark forest, a reminder of the unknown dangers that lurked just beyond the tree line. The forest itself was a place of mystery, its dense canopy hiding secrets that no one dared to uncover. The house, with its crumbling facade and overgrown garden, was a part of that mystery, an enigma that no one could solve.
No one dared go near. Children knew to stay away, warned by their parents with hushed voices and worried glances. The warnings were passed down from generation to generation, a tradition born out of fear and caution. The children, with their wide eyes and vivid imaginations, would often dare each other to get close, but none ever did. The house was a forbidden place, a source of endless fascination and terror. Even the bravest souls avoided the path that led to the house, a path slowly being reclaimed by nature. The once well-trodden trail was now overgrown with weeds and vines, the forest slowly encroaching on the town's forgotten corner. The path was a symbol of the town's collective fear, a physical manifestation of the boundary between the known and the unknown. It was a place where few dared to tread, a journey that no one wanted to take.
The house stood alone, a testament to forgotten memories and unspoken fears. It was a monument to the past, a relic that refused to fade away. The mist that often shrouded it added to its mystique, giving it an otherworldly appearance. It was as if the house existed in a different realm, a place where time stood still and the past was ever present. The townsfolk could only wonder about the secrets it held, the stories it could tell, if only someone were brave enough to listen.
David, young and restless, scoffed at the stories. He had always been the type to challenge the status quo, to question the tales that others took for granted. To him, ghost stories were nothing more than the product of overactive imaginations and a lack of critical thinking. New to town, he saw the house as a challenge, a dare whispered by the wind itself. The old, decrepit mansion at the edge of town was infamous, a place shrouded in mystery and fear. But to David, it was just another adventure waiting to be conquered. He didn't believe in ghosts, in whispers from beyond. The supernatural was a concept he found laughable, a relic of a bygone era when people didn't understand the world around them. Science and reason were his guides, and they left no room for the paranormal. He saw only an adventure, a chance to prove his courage. The thrill of the unknown, the excitement of facing something that others feared, was a siren call he couldn't resist. It was an opportunity to show everyone that fear was just an illusion, a shadow that vanished in the light of reason.
His friends, their faces pale in the fading light, tried to dissuade him. They had grown up with the stories, the warnings passed down through generations. To them, the house was a place of real danger, a place where the line between the living and the dead was thin and fragile.
They spoke of the stories, the warnings passed down through generations. Tales of strange noises, of lights flickering in the dead of night, of shadows moving where no shadows should be. They recounted the experiences of those who had dared to enter and had come out changed, or not at all.
But David wouldn't listen. His mind was made up, and no amount of pleading or warning could change it. He was determined to face the unknown, to prove that the stories were just that, stories. He laughed off their fears, his youthful arrogance a shield against the unknown. To him, their fear was a sign of weakness, a lack of understanding. He believed that once he had spent the night in the house, he would return with proof that it was just an empty shell, a forgotten relic of the past. He would explore the house, spend the night, and return with proof that it was just an empty shell, a forgotten relic of the past. Armed with a flashlight and his unwavering confidence, he approached the house, ready to uncover the truth and dispel the myths that had held his friends in thrall for so long. The night was his, and he was ready to conquer it. The air grew cold as David stepped across the threshold. Dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through grimy windows. The air was thick with the scent of decay, of time and neglect.
He walked slowly, his footsteps echoing in the silence.
Each room was the same, empty, yet filled with an oppressive presence. He could hear the wind whistling through cracks in the walls, a mournful sound that sent shivers down his spine.
And then he heard it. A whisper, soft and indistinct, seeming to come from the very walls themselves.
He stopped, listening intently, but the sound was gone. He continued his exploration, his unease growing with each passing moment. The shadows in the corners seemed to deepen, to writhe and twist as he watched.
He saw shapes in the darkness, distorted figures that vanished when he turned his head.
The whispers returned, louder now, circling him, taunting him.
He couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. A mix of sorrow and anger, of longing and despair.
He felt a cold hand brush against his cheek and he spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. But there was nothing there. He was alone, yet he felt surrounded. He stumbled into a room at the end of the hall, drawn by a strange pull he couldn't explain.
A large ornate mirror hung on the far wall, its surface clouded with age.
As he approached, he saw his reflection, but it wasn't him.
The face staring back was older, twisted into a grotesque mockery of his own.
The eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and a wide, chilling grin stretched across its face.
He reached out to touch the mirror, his fingers passing through the cold glass.
The reflection lunged, its hand shooting out to grab his wrist.
He cried out, pulling away, but it was too late.
The shadows in the room swirled around him, closing in like a suffocating blanket.
He thrashed against them, but they held him fast, their touch icy cold.
He could hear the whispers all around him, growing louder, more insistent.
They were pulling him in, dragging him down into the darkness.
His scream echoed through the empty house, a desperate plea lost in the night. Then silence. The shadows receded, the whispers faded, and the house stood quiet once more. David was gone, vanished without a trace. The sun rose, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, but its light couldn't penetrate the darkness that clung to the house.
The birdsong seemed muted, hesitant to break the eerie silence that hung in the air.
David's friends, their worry turning to dread, approached the house cautiously.
They called his name, their voices trembling, but there was no answer.
They found the front door ajar, swinging gently in the breeze. They stepped inside, their hearts heavy with a growing sense of despair. The house was empty. There was no sign of David, no indication of what had happened to him. The rooms, once filled with laughter and life, now stood silent and still, as if time itself had abandoned this place. Dust covered every surface and cobwebs hung like ghostly curtains in the corners. The air was thick with the scent of decay and neglect, a stark contrast to the vibrant memories that once filled these walls.
They searched every room, every nook and cranny, but he was gone. The echoes of their footsteps seemed to mock their efforts, bouncing off the walls in a cruel symphony of despair. Each creak of the floorboards, each whisper of the wind through the broken windows only deepened their sense of dread. They called out his name, their voices trembling with fear and hope, but the house remained silent, offering no answers.
The house had kept its secret, swallowed him whole, leaving no trace behind. It stood as a silent sentinel guarding the mysteries within its walls. The once grand facade now loomed ominously, its windows like dark, empty eyes staring back at them. The overgrown garden, with its tangled weeds and twisted branches, seemed to reach out, as if trying to pull them back into the darkness.
As they stumbled back out into the sunlight, shaken and horrified, they heard it, a whisper, faint and chilling, carried on the wind. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a ghostly murmur that sent shivers down their spines. They exchanged fearful glances, their hearts pounding in their chests. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, as if the house itself was trying to communicate with them, to share its sorrowful tale.
It seemed to come from the house itself, a soft, mournful sigh that spoke of loss and despair. The very walls seemed to breathe with a life of their own, exhaling the pain and suffering of those who had once called this place home. The dust motes danced in the sunlight like tiny spirits caught in an eternal waltz, a haunting reminder of the lives that had been lost within these walls. They turned to look back at the house, its windows gleaming in the morning light, and they knew with a certainty that chilled them to the bone that David was gone, consumed by the shadows that lurked within. The house, now bathed in the soft glow of dawn, seemed almost peaceful, but they knew better. It was a facade, a cruel illusion that hid the darkness within. They could feel the weight of the house's history pressing down on them, a heavy, suffocating presence that would haunt them forever. As they walked away, the whisper followed them, a constant reminder of the secrets that the house would never reveal. The house remained silent and watchful at the edge of the town. The whispers continued, a constant reminder of the darkness that lay hidden within its walls. The townspeople avoided it, their fear a palpable thing. David was never seen again. He became another story, another whisper in the wind, a cautionary tale whispered around campfires and in hushed tones. The house had claimed another victim, its hunger unsated, its thirst for souls unquenched. And it waited patiently for the next soul brave enough or foolish enough to cross its threshold.